My name is Kevin Kennedy. I spent more than 3 decades working at the United Nations in fields that range from communications to humanitarian affairs to peacekeeping. And perhaps the way I would approach this subject is to talk about as the basis the UN Charter. The United Nations is an organization that is founded on the notion of human rights and fundamental freedoms. And the whole of the United Nations Charter is really organized around the notion of allowing people to fulfill their capacity, their possibility, their potential as human beings, which of course is the fundamental thing that drives human rights, that every individual really should have the right to achieve the maximum that he or she can achieve. So in that sense, I think the university has a very important role to play. Ultimately, what is the value of education at university, or what is the value of universities? The value of universities is to enable people to become the most human being they can be. So the relevance of a university education must be not just about skills or not just about knowledge, but also about values and about the understanding of the value of other human beings. Now, during the course of my period at the United Nations, I had the privilege of being able to go to very many different places and working with UN peacekeeping operations to see people living in post-conflict environments where their most basic human rights were really being violated almost daily. And that most basic of human rights, rights such as the right to be able to eat a decent meal, to be able to be assured a basic amount, the amount necessary to live in terms of just potable water, for example, or sanitation. And this is another aspect where I think there is a dovetailing of human rights and the university, because ultimately universities are engaged in research, they are engaged in transmitting knowledge on how to address basic problems, and whether those basic problems are problems of political systems or social systems, or whether they are economic problems. It's the university that brings all of those issues together. In 2013, the UN Secretary General took a new approach to the work of the UN as an organization called Rights Up Front. And basically what this approach says is that human rights should infuse everything that the United Nations does. Because ultimately, for example, if you look at the genocides that have taken place, if you look at some of the worst conflicts that have taken place in the last 100 years, violations of human rights have served as the early warning. They have shown that something much worse was going to come. And I think we should take that seriously. That if, for example, we know that people in our own societies or in other societies around the world are suffering from deep poverty, if they are suffering from the kind of repression that comes from the lack of work, from the lack of a sufficient amount of drinking water, from the lack of housing, lack of food, then we have to be aware that that's a sign of worse things to come. And I think the university, all universities, which are really focused on the future in many ways, because they are trying to point a direction towards new ways of doing things or new ways of solving problems, have a responsibility to address the issues of poverty. Because in the end, poverty can be a driver for conflict, it can be a driver for all kinds of actions that hurt not only societies, but everything from global society to the human environment. So I do believe that universities have an important role to play in poverty alleviation.